Hello, this is Jennifer, and I'm glad to be back with another video for you. Today is all about creating easy, luminescent, magical, kind of color-shifting, shimmery backgrounds. I will tell you this is a new product from Tim Holtz from the Distress line, so it goes along with a lot of those distress colors that we know and love, but you can use it without other distress products and in so many different ways. Today's video, I will focus on the basics of this new product and then show you many ways to use them, but I'm telling you, this is just more the basics. I have many videos coming out in the future where I'll dive deep into the other great things you can do with these products. Today is really mostly about creating backgrounds. I will say that a lot of these techniques you can do with other mists and sprays you may have. The results will be a little bit different, but you can sure try those. I'm really excited about today's particular product because it's different than others I have, and I really like the results. And better yet, it's pretty affordable. So let's start with basic information about the new Distress Spritzes, and then we will go into techniques and many cards. So this is the new Tim Holtz Distress Spritz product. There are 12 colors. You can buy them in a bundle or buy them individually, and they're in 12 popular colors that match the Distress line, so you'll recognize the names. So this is a formula that is made up of pearlized pigment in a clear fluid base that works great on porous surfaces like paper, wood, and fabric. And you can use this as an accent, like a spritz, on a background without really changing it, or you could go heavy with the product and make something super shimmery. Now, it is a pigment that's colored in a clear fluid. So again, that shimmery color kind of sits on top of whatever you have. And what's best is I don't find a need to use a fixative on it. It stays put. Now the bottle is designed, it's got a ball in it that you really need to shake around to get that pigment flowing in there. So you have lots of shimmery goodness inside. And it's also designed to give a spritz. So here is a spritz from about 1 to 2 feet above. Look at that fine little detail that you get. This would be a great accent on top of any background or on pattern paper or whatever. I'm just making some swatches on white cardstock. You could also add a few more spritzes and get kind of a nice mist, or you could really flood your cardstock with the spritz. The product is very affordable, so I wasn't afraid to create some really awesome shimmery backgrounds today, and I didn't use much of it. So there's a difference between a little spritz and a lot of it there, and this is the picked raspberry color. I wish my camera picked up the shimmer better. Some colors it seems to pick up the shimmer better, and you'll see those as we go. Now I'm making some ink swatches here so that I can later go and die cut a circle from the center and then glue it to the top of my bottle so I know what each color looks like. Now I was doing it on scrap cardstock and I realized I should use the overspray on a card base. So I have some card panels here and my little swatch that I lay right at the top center. And as I'm spraying my little swatch, I will then remove the swatch and I'll have a background that I can use on a card. All I have to do is stamp something in that open area and we have a card base. So I'm just trying to make better use of that extra spray. Another thing you can do is pick up that spray from your glass work surface, which I'll do a little bit of later. By the way, weathered wood is one of my favorites. It gives like a platinum look that is just gorgeous. Now, a few more things about this product. These are in familiar distress ink colors. Some of Tim's favorites are the ones that he released first. So you can use these along with like your distress inks, your oxides, and more. I'm not going to show those results in today's video, but I will in future videos. Today, I'm just using the spritzes on basic white and black cardstock. Now, what's fun about these is if you give them a little spritz, which is what this was really designed to do, you get that spritz of color that lands on your background, and it just is like a nice accent. But if you really add more of the product, like go beyond a spritz, like kind of flood your cardstock, the different colors of the spritz react differently than each other. So you get some really cool effects, and it's fun to play around with them and get to know them. And you'll see some of those colors today. And by the way, I'm just doing a quick play around with this today. I'm getting to know these products and sharing them with you. But Tim Holtz did a deep dive on these products in a long live that he did a couple weeks ago, and I will link to that below. Definitely worth checking out. And I will play along with some of those other ideas in future videos. So now you can see the beautiful result that you can get with a spritz on white cardstock, a few extra spritzes on white cardstock, or a lot of the product on white cardstock. You get a lot of beautiful shine, but what's even better is when you do so on colored cardstock or black cardstock. I'm using Distress Black Heavystock, which is a Tim Holtz product. It's super smooth. It's like velvety smooth, and it is the darkest black. I love this stuff. And it is great to use here. You could use regular black cardstock. I just happen to really like the Tim Holtz version. And you can use these spritzes on the black. And boy, does that make it just bam. It gives it so much intensity, and it's like luminescent. It's just amazing, the result. So on these little swatches, I'm just putting some fossilized amber, picked raspberry, and peacock feathers, and then I'll let it dry so you can see what it looks like. I'm going to do a lot of different techniques on black today, some on white too, because the black is definitely where I love these the most. Now, again, these can be used as accents on other backgrounds and with other techniques and other products, but today I'm just focusing on cardstocks. So now that I've just done a little bit of demonstration on white and black, we'll do much more. Let's look at the colors. So first up, we have picked raspberry, which I'll use quite a bit during this video because I love the color. Here we have worn lipstick, and notice the shimmer that appears as soon as you tilt it in the light. Now, the lights in my craft room aren't great at showing this off in the video, but if you take this like in natural light or regular overhead light, it is amazing, the shimmer. It's very similar to like the Perfect Pearls that you've seen me use for many years, but now it's in a clear base, fluid base, so you can spray it on and have that pearly color on your project. Another of my favorites is fossilized amber because it gives a gorgeous gold. Now, Twisted Citron's crazy because if you look straight down, it has like a kind of a gold color, but as soon as you tilt it, that lime color pops out. And then here we have peeled paint and peacock feathers, which of course is one of my favorites, and you can see that shimmer when we tilt it. And then Uncharted Mariner, which has a gorgeous navy look from above, but then when you tilt it, it's more of a royal blue. It's so cool. Then we have Wilted Violet and Walnut Stain, and then finally Weathered Wood. And the Weathered Wood has like a nice platinum color to it. Gorgeous. Now, before we get into techniques, I have one last thing I wanted to mention because I know folks will ask, is how is this different than the Tim Holtz Distress Mica Stain Sprays that I love and use a lot in videos? The Mica Stain Spray, which is over on the left, has a color fluid or ink, and it has colored like pearl in it, whereas the spritz is just the color pearl in a clear fluid base. So when you add the mica on top of something, the color kind of can cover the background a bit, whereas you can use the spritz as an accent on top of something without completely changing it, unless of course you add a lot of it. So they can be used in different ways and in some similar ways. But I'm finding that the shimmer, because there's more shimmer in the Distress Spritz, I'm finding that I'm really liking these for creating really beautiful shimmery backgrounds. So it's just very luminescent, looks magical in real life. So you still will see me use the Mica Stain Sprays. I love them. I'll link to a video using them here up at the top right and in my description below. They're so much fun. A little goes a long way with those, and it just puts more color down because the fluid is colored too. So I sprayed both here, so you can do a comparison. On the left is Distress Spritz. On the right is the Mica Stain Spray. So you can see that on the left, it's like the pink is like sitting on top of the white, whereas the one on the right, it is the pearlescent shine on top of a color spray on top of white, if that makes any sense. So I think it's good to think of Distress Spritz as an accent, but you can also step it up to make it like the star of your card. So you'll see me do both today. Okay, now let's dive in. I'm going to make a bunch of backgrounds and make some cards along the way, and then we'll incorporate some other products. Here I have the Tim Holtz Black Heavystock, and I'm applying some picked raspberry, fossilized amber, and peacock feathers. Now you'll see I'm putting a heavy amount down. I'm kind of flooding the cardstock. That's going to give me a ton of shimmer, but you can also see in some areas you get more of a spritz. Usually when I spritz, I hold it farther away from the cardstock, but here I want a lot, so I'm putting it closer to the cardstock when I spray. Now this is going to look like a hot mess, but once it dries and we trim it down, it'll be fantastic. I'm going to set it aside to dry. In the meantime, I'm going to do some more. Now a reminder, you don't have to use a lot. You don't have to cover your whole background. You could just do like one blob of one color and then have another blob of another color and them kind of come together and mix in the middle, and you'll have a fantastic background. Or you could do smaller areas and die cut from them, which you'll see me do later. Now, I do recommend shaking the product every time you use it. I like to put a baby wipe over the top while I shake it so it doesn't get anywhere. And then I use that same baby wipe to wipe the nozzle clean after every use. And I also store these standing up. All right, so now those kind of look like a hot mess too, but let's let it dry. Okay, so let's go back to the first one. This is where I use the 3 colors together. Look at that shimmer. When we cut this down, it'll be amazing, and it was so fast to do. Here's the one where we just did the 2 colors, super quick, lots of shine, especially on that black. And keep in mind, you could do this on colored cardstock, maybe have like a red cardstock and then spray peacock feathers on it, and you'd end up with blue shimmer on red cardstock. I'm just sticking with white and black today. Now, another way I really like to use these, in addition to flooding your cardstock like I just showed you, is to do the spritz. But do spritz of a few colors to really kind of create your own galaxy looking background. So I'm doing spritzes of the same 3 colors from about 1.5 feet above. And you can see that this will dry very quickly. It looks cool right here, but watch, when you tilt it, it just is amazing. It gives a little bit of a color shifting effect, but it shines like mad. It's just so much fun to use, and you saw how easy it was to create. I will use these backgrounds a little bit later to create some cards, but first I wanted to just show you the same colors done kind of in the same way on 3 different papers. On the left I have Distress watercolor paper, love that paper. In the middle I have my most used white cardstock, which is just Neenah Classic Crest Solar White, just a basic white cardstock. Then on the right I have that incredible black Heavystock from Tim Holtz. And I'm going to do the same thing kind of on each so you can see the different look you get on each. And while I'm doing this, I thought I'd mention a few of the other things you can do. You can paint with these. So you could paint in an image that maybe you do on black or colored cardstock or even white, and you would have shimmery kind of watercolor look. You can also spray this on top of backgrounds that you created with other Distress products, and it gives a nice shimmer on the top. You can also spray this on pattern papers, which will give that pattern paper a shimmer. And by changing up what color of the spritz you use, you can get different looks. And you can even spritz this on a stamp and stamp it on cardstock and get a shimmery image. Now here's the white cardstock. It absorbs right away, and you can see that blending and the fantastic shimmer that you can get. Now the black Heavystock, I put quite a bit on there, and you can see it's very wet, but I'll bring it back in a moment so you can see how it dries. And then you have the watercolor paper. You can see it's got kind of like a ripply effect with some of the colors. Honestly, I don't use the watercolor paper that much. That's the one over on the right. I prefer it on the regular white cardstock instead, but it just depends on the look you're going for. You can see it's a little bit different. That's the watercolor paper on the right. And then look at the black. I love this. Looking straight on, it's pretty subtle, but as soon as you tilt it in that light, any kind of light movement will definitely make it shine. And now I'm going to repeat that process, but with 3 different colors. The only reason I'm showing this is I'm going to turn them into cards in a moment, so I thought I'd show you this process. Very fast to do. On these, I use peacock feathers, uncharted mariner, and weathered wood. And that weathered wood has a beautiful platinum look to it that is just gorgeous, like a silvery platinum. I love it. Now, the uncharted mariner, I love it because it looks navy from above, but when you tilt it, it gives kind of a royal blue tint. It's just gorgeous. Oh, and then I added a few spritzes, close up kind of the fossilized amber, which is a gold. So here's the watercolor paper. You can see how it kind of gets this ripply effect, which is really cool. I'm not using those today, but it is another way to use these products. Here we have on the black, and I really like how the fossilized amber and that peacock feather, the uncharted mariner, and the weathered wood all shine on this. Those are some of my favorite colors. And then this is the cardstock. This is just the plain white cardstock. You can see the fossilized amber around the edges. I'm going to start by making a card with this one. So I thought I'd add, now that it's dry, a few quick droplets in spritz of the fossilized amber. To get like bigger droplets, you can kind of halfway press the nozzle down, and it'll just kind of just put out a few bigger drops, which really brings those drops of shine, like that spatter or splatter look. It's fantastic. You can also take the nozzle off and tap the little tube that's sticking out from it and get little droplets that way. Or you can use a brush and put a brush right into the bottle and then tap the brush onto it, which you'll see me do later. So I'm really adding spritzes and drops of this product on top of the spritzing that I've already done, right? But you could do those spritzes and drops on top of any other background you do, maybe some stamping or some distress inking. I just wanted to build up lots of shine here. All right, so I gave that some time to dry. You could also heat set it or dry it with a drying tool if you prefer. And then I trimmed it down, and look how gorgeous that is. I love this one, so I thought I'd go ahead and create a card with it. And again, this one started with white cardstock. So let's do some stamping directly on the background. I have my Misty stamping tool with a stamp and stick mat inside, and this gorgeous Tim Holtz Bold Botanical stamp set that now has coordinating dies that work with it. So I'm going to use the image up on the top right. These are gorgeous. Cling stamps can offer more amazing detail than clear stamps. So I love that Tim has a lot of these very detailed florals that give great results. Now my cardstock is completely dry, has lots of shimmer, but it's dry. I use my anti-static powder tool, and now I'll stamp this with Versamark ink. Now I really want to make sure I got a good impression, so I'm going to repeat that, and I'll just stamp it again with the Versamark ink. I will then add white embossing powder and heat set it. You could use black, you could use silver, you could use gold, whatever you want, but I thought the bright white would look great against that shimmery background. Now you could leave this as is and add a sentiment on top, but I like that there's a coordinating die that will either cut out the rectangle itself. It's like a rounded rectangle that's the perfect size to cut this out. I thought about doing that at first, but I decided instead to use the die in the set that cuts out the flower so I could pop that up. So I'm lining it up in my die cut plates here. This is the Empress die cut machine. I'll run that through my die cut machine, and now I have the flower popped up from the background. Okay, so I trimmed my background to be about 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm adding it onto a top folding white note card that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. Now before I add my flower back in, I'm going to add 4 or 5 white die cuts of the same shape that are glued together behind it. This will give it dimension so that when I put it into that little negative space on my card, it'll stand out a little bit. Now you could use foam tape here if you prefer. I just find that the stacked cardstock holds up better in the mail, and I can use pieces of cardstock that likely would have ended up in the trash anyway. For a sentiment, I'm using the new Simon Says Stamp Sunshine and Smile stamp set. I really liked the bold, classic look of these sentiments, and that there are good, mix of sentiments included. I will be using a lot in today's video, and it is going into my most used sentiment stamp set bin on my desk, so I can reach for it often. Now at this point, I wanted to add more like splatter or drops of the fossilized amber. And instead of just like flicking it on or spritzing more on and messing up my white note card, I decided to do a little controlled way of doing it. I am dipping my brush into the bottle and then adding little dots. For those of you who like the look of this but want to kind of control it, this is a good option. Now for others, you would rather have the random look, you can just add flicks however you want. But sometimes I think it's fun to be able to add these droplets, and it's more like little accents. Instead of gems and pearls, I'm doing the dots of shimmer. So I did so with the fossilized amber and some of the Uncharted Mariner. And then I also added some into that heat embossed image there in the center, and the heat embossing kind of resists it so it stays inside of the lines. I then gave it some time to dry, and here's the final card. The shimmer in this is unreal, especially in sunlight. It's just incredible. So if somebody opens this by a window, it is quite amazing. And it really didn't take long to do it all. We did the spritz background, just let it dry, heat embossed the image, added the die cutting and extra droplets, and we're good to go. Now you could do a bunch of these in different colors and make a set of cards, and I think I might do that, especially with the other floral images in the set. So there you have a very shimmery background done on white cardstock. Okay, now let's do another card, but this time we're going to use the background that just has the spritz of color all over it. Now, I did a full cardstock sheet here. So this is 8.5 by 11 of that black Heavystock, and I just decided to do quick spritz over the whole thing, let it dry, and now I can cut this into 4 pieces, and that will give me 4 cards. Very fast to do. Now, from this, you could create a background, as I'll be doing, or you could die cut from it. You could use it with an embossing folder, or you could add stenciling on top of it. We're just going to do a background today. I thought this shine on black cardstock would look really cool with a hummingbird, so I'm using the new Simon Says Stamp Exquisite Hummingbird die set. And I have different areas of cardstock that have the picked raspberry, fossilized amber, and peacock feathers colors on the black. And so I'm die cutting from those areas. So some of these backgrounds, like this one here where I did a full sheet, I'll cut a couple backgrounds out of it, but the leftover area on the side I can die cut from. So from this sheet, I'm cutting out this 4.25 by 5.5 inch panel. I'll cut another one, but then the edges, I will die cut some of the hummingbird pieces. So I end up with some pink, blue, and gold hummingbird pieces, and then I can glue them back together. And I will say I'm playing with these papers that have a lot of the spritz on it, and I'm finding none of it's rubbing off on my fingers. You can see my fingers are clean, so I don't feel that I need to have a fixative with it, which is a huge plus for this product. Now here's the hummingbird, all black cardstock with the 3 different colors of Distress Spritz. I think it's beautiful and perfect for hummingbird. So I will take my spritz background, the one that has just spritzes of the 3 different colors, and I'll use the Nested Dome Arches Frame die set. This is a new one from Simon Says Stamp. You'll get a closer look at it later, but it's a series of arched frames. You can see the frame it cuts over there. Well, I'm using the opening of the frame here onto a 4.25 by 5.5 inch card. Then I'm putting the frame back in place, and on top of that, I'll put a gold frame. Sorry, my head gets in the way, but now I have a nice focal point there at the center of my card. For a sentiment, I'm using the new Beautiful Blooms stamp set. There's a great little sentiment in there, but I wanted to show you all of this. There's a stencil set that creates what you see here. There's actually 3 stencils. I only have 2 of them here in the camera, but you can use the stencils on their own, the stamp set on their own, or use them together. And those outline flowers line up with the flowers of the stenciling. I think this is great, and I plan to do a live with this product in the near future, but for now I'm just using a sentiment from that stamp set that says, "Just a note to say hello." I thought it was a nice small sentiment, perfect for this card. Now I'm stamping that into the open white space there at the center, and then I will glue my hummingbird on top of that. I finished it off with a few small matte gold gemstones, but I didn't feel it needed anything else thanks to the shine of the spritz. And by the way, you could also die cut your pieces first, then add the spritz. Totally up to you, but it's a great way to make your die cut shine. It'd be great for a layered floral. Okay, let's move on to my next card. For this one, I put a die cut, a background die cut over all that shimmer, so it's a little more subtle, but a great way to use the spritz. This is the new Simon Says Stamp Mini Fab Floral Plate. I cut that from black Heavystock. Now the piece in my left hand was actually spritz that had been left over on my glass work surface after using it on other paper. So basically it's the over spritz, everything that was kind of left behind. I just dragged my black cardstock through it, and you could see there's a few different colors dragged through there, and let it dry, and look at that beautiful shimmer. Now to give it more of a clean look, I'm putting this die cut on top of it. You can see the shine come through those openings. I also thought it'd be fun to have a frame around it. So here is that Nested Domed Arches frame die set again. You can see the different size frames that you can get from this. So I'm cutting one of the larger frames from a 4.25 by 5.5 inch piece of white cardstock. And then I will put all this together on a 4.25 by 5.5 inch white note card. I did trim the side of my black a little bit so it wouldn't stick out the sides. Now I'm putting the frame on top, and that gives it a nice clean look. I then die cut 4 of that same frame die from white cardstock. These are actually scraps. Glued them together and then put a gold die cut on top. And look at that, it almost looks like a stained glass window. At this point, I wasn't sure which sentiment to use. I thought I was going to use this great "You Brighten My Day." It comes with the words and then a shadow for it, but I decided it was a little too playful looking for this card. So instead, I opted for a more serious, very real type of stamp set. This is the Bad Day Good Vibes set. And I love that these are just real, encouraging sentiments. And there are also smaller ones that you can stamp on the inside of the card. So let's first stamp the small sentiment on the inside of the card. I have my card open up here in my Misty stamping tool. I have a Simon Says Stamp Perfect Placement Guide over it. This guide helps me to get my sentiment centered and also practice stamping it before I stamp it into my card. I find that tool very helpful. Then on the front of the card, I used the sentiment, "Life is hard." It's just very real and I love it. And I die cut that, added some stacked die cuts behind it, and then also added some gold gemstones on the front. And that sentiment on the inside that says, "Making it through today is enough," that is just something we need to hear sometimes, right? Now look at the front of this. It looks like a stained glass window. You have lots of shimmer, and that was just all leftover spritz that I picked up off of my glass work surface. So think about the ways you can add background dyes and other things on top of that shimmer so it's more of a backdrop but really catches the light nicely. And if you think I'm a little overly excited about this product, you're probably right, but this is just right up my alley. I love shimmer. You've seen me do it many times in different ways in videos, and this just makes it really easy. Okay, now for one of my favorite ways to use Distress Spritz, and that is with embossing folders. I have the new Brilliant Hibiscus die and embossing folder set, so you can use the embossing folder alone, which I'm doing, or you can use the die to cut out the flowers and then use the embossing folder. I'm putting one of those super shimmery backgrounds that we created on black Heavystock into this embossing folder and running it through my die cut machine. This is a 3D embossing folder, so you're going to have a lot of texture from it. Now this looks beautiful as is, but to make that floral pattern stand out more, we're going to sand away the raised area. I'm using a Tim Holtz mini ink blending tool that you normally put foam on, but instead I'm putting on one of his sanding discs. This is basically a piece of sandpaper, and this tool with that sanding disc makes it really easy to just lightly sand along the raised areas. So you're kind of sanding off that pearly shine, and then the black is exposed, so it makes the pattern stand out more. You could also use a paper sander or a sanding block or sandpaper if you prefer. I just like the sanding disc on the mini ink blending tool because you could get into the smaller areas easily. So once I'm done, I will wipe it with a dry cloth and then look at how those flowers now stand out. So I prefer to do the spritz, then do the embossing folder, and then sand away. But you could also do the embossing folder first and then spritz on top. Totally up to you. I left this very simple so that you could see all of that shine. I cut the background down to be about 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches, and I added it with some dimension to a white note card. I then used that Sunshine and Smiles stamp set once again, and I added the sentiment right at the center. By the way, I've been saying this is shimmer, but I think it's more of a pearly look. I think pearl or pearlized is a better descriptor. All right, now let's do the same technique, but on white cardstock. I'm using a 3D embossing folder and die set. You can cut out the little fruits, but I'm just using the embossing folder today. And I have a piece of the white cardstock with the 3 colors sprayed on it, which I showed you before. So this is all Distress Spritz on white cardstock. So here's the 3D embossing folder. I love the look of this. It's just unique and very classic. So I'm just running this through my die cut machine as I would a normal 3D embossing folder. And then we'll do the sanding on the raised areas. So last time we had the pink, blue, and yellow on black. Now we have it on white, and it'll give a softer look, but it'll still have that magnificent pearlized look to it. This time I used a sanding block to remove that extra spritz from the raised areas. Use a dry cloth to wipe the excess away, and look at that. Now before I put this on a card base, I thought I would add just a bit more of the fossilized amber. This will look like little gold droplets on it. I'm putting a brush into the bottle, putting a little bit on my glasswork surface, and then I'm just tapping some of it on top. So this will just give us subtle droplets of that pearlized amber, which looks very gold, and I think that makes the background even better. Now finishing this off, I thought I'd do 3 different sentiments on it. This is a fun way to make a simple card a little more interesting. So that first sentiment, wishing you lots of sunshine, is from the Sunshine and Smile stamp set that I showed you earlier. The second one that says thinking of you is from this new Simon Says Stamp Beachcombing stamp set, and I used the coordinating die to cut it out. This stamp set's gorgeous. You can do stamping or stenciling to fill in these images. I hope to use this in a future video, but for now, I'm just using the sentiment. By the way, they have a whole bunch of products that match that line. For the third sentiment, I'm using the new Simon Says Stamp All Around the World stamp set. I really like that die that coordinates with it. Also, it creates that earth. That'd be fun to do a Distress Spritz earth and like peacock feathers and twisted citron. That'd be gorgeous. But today, I'm just using the Sending You Smiles from the stamp set. Now I'm stamping the Sending You Smiles along the top edge of a piece of white cardstock. And here's a little trick that I've shared before but is worth sharing again to cut this into a nice strip. I put a Post-it note right where I want it to cut, where I want my trimmer to cut, right below the sentiment. So I have an even sentiment strip. I put the Post-it note there. Then I line up the edge of that Post-it note with the edge of my trimmer and cut. And there we have my sentiment perfectly centered there on that sentiment strip. I then took a couple strips of scrap cardstock that I had and glued that to the back so it has some nice strong dimension and it'll stand up nicely on our card. So this is a very simple card design. It came together very quickly, and I had the opportunity to use 3 different sentiments, mixing them together on a card. This is a great design next time you have a fun background that all you need is the sentiments added. You can see the shine that you get and how this has a very different, softer pearlized look than the black version that I just did. Love that you can use the spritzes with your embossing folders. And the best part about this, I still have some great backgrounds left. This one was my favorite. That's my favorite. It looks unbelievable in real life. In fact, I was really unsure what to do with it. I thought about putting this repeating rainbows die on top of it. I don't know. I was scared to use it. I really wanted to save it for the perfect thing. So I'm going to think about it and finish that card later. And I still have these other spritz backgrounds too. And I gotta thank Tim for creating products that just add magic to our card making. This pearly look, it's just outstanding. Now, remember, this was just the tip of the iceberg. Using these products mostly on backgrounds and on black and white cardstock, I will be doing more videos with more techniques in the near future. If you're interested in the products I used, I have them linked in my YouTube description below. At the end, I'll link to a video that I did on the Tim Holtz Distress Mica Stain Sprays, and I'll link to Tim's video about these Distress Spritz products. I thank you for watching. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.